First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. This is my third MAGFest doing this and my 7th year worth of panels doing this. And I'm like, I didn't think people would like this. And then they're like, we want more. I'm like, okay. So what this panel ultimately is we are going to discuss different games that are available in video games. So a lot of different jobs in video games. And a lot of people, when they think about jobs in video games, they think about coding, they think about art, they think about design, but there's a lot of different opportunities out there that people don't even know exists. A lot of different job titles that people are like, that can't possibly be a thing, like baseball analyst is a popular one that's at Sony PlayStation. So we'll talk about the different types of jobs and then literally just a complete walkthrough of figuring out what you want to do, how you can apply, how you can find these jobs, how to make it through the actual interview process, the applicant process, and then even the stuff beyond just that. Oh, did I do something wrong already? All right, so a disclaimer and also a little bit about myself. I'm a contractor, so everything that I say up here is from my experience as being a contractor for various video game companies and brands. I am not saying anything on behalf of any company, so don't go like, he said he worked for such and such. All of this is my own information and my own opinions about things. So we're going to talk about some controversial stuff. We're going to talk about AI, we're going to talk about school, and it's going to get spicy. But a little bit about myself. Oh, my name is Cameron, by the way. Sorry about that. What? You're awesome. High five after this is over. I've been in experiential marketing is the name of the field that I'm in. Like years ago, they used to call us booth babes, but I've been doing this for almost 16 years now. I actually got my start at Nationals Ballpark doing this. It's actually a crazy story. And if you guys don't mind, because people have asked me before why I called this panel From Hot Dogs to Smash Bros, can I share a story with you guys of how this actually happened? It's actually, I promise you it's weird, but well, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But so I actually got my start in video games. I have pictures too, working at Nationals Ballpark. The bird is irrelevant, I just like the bird. But this is if anyone here is old enough to remember when Nationals Ballpark first came to the Navy Yard area, 2007, almost 16 years ago, when we had these ugly yellow and red uniform, it was terrible times back then. But I actually worked in the children's area in the toward the front of the baseball stadium, and I actually was the guy who was flipping hot dogs. And conveniently, I sucked at it. And next to us, there was this area called the PlayStation Pavilion, and the lady who was over there, they were both Nationals Ballpark staff and they were PlayStation representatives. She hated video games. So she hated video games, I hated making hot dogs, so we switched. And that's how I ended up over in the PlayStation area. Now, I actually have a photo of it. This is it if you've never seen it before. It's a terrible photo, but they had all these different PlayStation games that would be there during the baseball season. And as I mentioned, there were Nationals Ballpark staff, and then there were actually PlayStation representatives. Well, in the time that I was there, it maybe 2 months or so, 6 of them had cycled in and out for various reasons. One of them got fired, one of them showed up to work drunk. This is not a slight to anyone that works at PlayStation. This is just these particular people, had to leave early, if one was to say. And the neat thing about this is, and we're going to talk about the power of networking a lot in this panel, I actually got very familiar with their boss, because I would be the one that she would talk to about how stuff was going when they weren't there and they were transitioning one person in and one person out. So after a while, the 6th, 7th person had to go and come. I was actually talking to her, and I actually shot my shot. I said, hey, I know you guys are trying to find somebody new. I would be interested in the job. Obviously this is not the same organization. I'd be leaving one job to work for another one, even though it's in the exact same place. But in essence, telling her I've been here since the first person. In essence, when you bring new people in here, I in essence train them on what the goings on is in this area, even when they don't know. Because we had games that even though someone works for a certain company, they don't play every single game. We had stuff like SingStar and Guitar Hero and Gran Turismo and of course MLB. And she kind of laughed it off, and she was like, I'll think about it. And then 3 days later, I get a message from my boss from National Ballpark saying that the rep from PlayStation called us, or the contract manager for this called us, and they said that they want to bring you on board and basically take you from us. And that's how I literally got started as the PlayStation Pavilion rep at Nationals Ballpark. From there, I actually met another individual who, eventually another manager came in with me for the Pavilion, and he actually knew someone who was involved with Nintendo contracts. So from there, that's how I got involved with Nintendo. And I'm not going to tell every story because this panel will be like 1,000,000 hours long. Like, for example, the one about when my first day working at Nintendo, I actually killed that guy in that costume. But interestingly enough, he was actually really cool about it. And because of him, he actually put me on with another person within the Nintendo space that actually did the costume character work. And in addition to doing the promotional events and experiential marketing, I actually learned how to be a costume character and a handler, probably because he didn't want to die a second time. So this is actually me as Pikachu. I shouldn't have had this person take the photo because this is the most awfully zoomed in thing ever. But funny story about this was actually at Pokemon VGC back when, I forgot which game it was. The one with, it was like the grass snake and then the fire pig and whichever Pokemon game that was. Black and White, that's the one it was. And funny enough, I actually got so costume characters actually get like interval breaks. I actually got stuck in the suit. So the way my friend took this picture, I hate them forever, but the way the Pikachu outfit works is it's one giant costume with like 2 yellow Uggs, and I got stuck on like these cables that like you pull them and make the ears wiggle because I got a big frame. And this is actually a picture my friend took of me two staff members trying to pull me out of this thing. And I kind of censored out this character over there because it was kind of nightmare fuelish seeing this Pokemon in like 2 halves. But from that moment on, they called me Stuck Guy. Like everyone at the Nintendo staff here called me Stuck Guy for like the next like month. Like we only did this for like a week, but like anytime I would like see any of them in person, they'd be like, "Hey, it's Stuck Guy," and I'm like, that shouldn't be sticking. But that's gonna be important later. But but after this, I actually went back and did some more work for PlayStation. One of them, and this is actually a story that I really wish I should tell more often, but the Uncharted 3 event. So for the release of Uncharted 3, PlayStation had multiple tournaments inside AMC movie theaters. So we would take the entire movie theater front row and turn that into just a whole hub full of PlayStation 3s, and I think it was it was a 3 at that point. PlayStation 3s, and then plug them into the big screen. I actually have a picture of that. So you could flip between the different people playing and see them playing in the tournament. Well, we did a tech test at the beginning of this, basically making sure it works and everything like that. And I was young, and I had never played Uncharted before, and I was really into like Call of Duty and Halo at the time. So when I was just getting like my butt handed to me by these devs, which I mean, it's Naughty Dog. I should have expected this to happen, but I took it personally. And then so there was one person that I ended up. This is actually important in networking. There was one person that I actually was able to kill in the game, and once again, I was young. I just relentlessly teabagged him. I don't know why. I don't know what came over me, but I found out later on that person was actually one of the shareholders and who was just trying to see how the game worked. And of course he found out who I was. I avoided him like COVID the whole day. Like it was, but eventually I did have a conversation with him, and he was like, I like your enthusiasm, and because he saw me work like this the rest of the day. I like your enthusiasm. I wanted to know if you'd be interested in doing more work like this. So ironically, he sent me 2 packages. The first package was a box of tea bags because he was very spiteful, but then he also sent me a PlayStation. And like that was like he didn't do it at the same time. He like gave it some time. He had to let the teabag thing sink in. And petty. But I actually ended up doing some promotional work where they ended up sending me products, and I would go to different retailers, Best Buy, Walmart, Target, GameStop, and I would show off upcoming games. One example of that, this didn't happen at the same time, it was like a couple year gap, but one example of that was PlayStation VR. They actually sent me that about 6 months early, and I would go to different retailers and show stuff like that off. We're going to talk about a lot of these jobs, but I would go to different retailers and show these off. So this is my actual setup that they gave me to take different places. I have a picture of it in my house. I found out that technically NDAs don't expire, so if I showed you guys that, I'd be in legal trouble. So here's a picture of it at the store. But from there, I did these events for a while. Eventually, there was contracts do shift from company to company. So if a brand like, say, Nintendo wanted to put on, say, a mall tour, there might be a certain promotional marketing company or PR company that takes the contract, staffs the event, and then that could change from company to company. Well, the Nintendo one that I did for so long actually changed companies, and I actually got a phone call from the new hiring manager, and she was kind of interested in, like my experience and resume and everything else. And she had no idea who I was until I mentioned, and I also did, Pokemon VGC. And of course she was like, oh, you're Stuck Guy from all those years ago. So then that's actually how I ended up getting back into doing more roles with Nintendo. And that's how it came full circle. And the name of the panel from Hotdogs to Smash Bros, I got to do the release of Smash Brothers Ultimate when it came out. If any of you actually went to that mall tour, you were there. Anyone to that mall tour during that time of the year. But yes, that is the full story of Hotdogs and Smash Bros. And thank you for listening to that. I do my best. But that is enough about me, because we're here for you. We're here to talk about how you guys can get jobs in video games. Now, the first and most important thing before you apply to anything, before you try to go out and reach out to people or talk to things, you have to first figure out what it is that you want to do in video games. This is probably one of the most common issues that come to me if I'm working and someone comes to me and says, how can I do this? Can I do this job? It's weird. People really, there's kids who'll come up and assume that all they have to do is just beat me in a game of Smash Brothers. I wouldn't even want to challenge me in Smash Brothers. I'm kind of nice with it. But they could just beat me in Smash and then just this crown will descend and then they'll have my job. It doesn't work that way. But I wish it did, though. That'd be kind of awesome. But first thing you have to ask yourself is, do you want to play video games all day? Because many people don't understand that a lot of jobs in video games don't even get to play video games at work. There are jobs out there that are outside of the video game industry that will let you play games in your free time. They'll give you a PlayStation, give you a Switch, give you an Xbox on your downtime. But many positions in video games don't let you play games all day. They might give you opportunities to take home merch. They might give you opportunities to get discounts of games. But if you're working in the finance department at, say, like Ubisoft, and they find out you've been playing games all day, it's probably bad. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there is no such thing as an ideas guy. I've heard this in the industry many a time, even when, I have different conversations with people about how someone will come up and say, I really want to work in video games. I got a whole bunch of great ideas for this game or this concept and such and things of that nature. That position doesn't exist. They don't just walk out in the wild and just look for someone with just these immaculate conceptions of video game just beauty. The closest you'll get to that is maybe a creative director, but at the same time you're still at the whim of shareholders. If someone says, no, we don't want this anymore, we want this now, you're not going to be able to stop situations like that. But in all, this is not a position in video games, and it's not where you should start your conversation with anybody if you want to get into video games. And the last thing, this is actually a two-part situation. When you come up to somebody to network with them, and you come to them with the proposal that I'll do anything, that is a very bad look for you professionally. Because ultimately what that tells the person that you're talking to is, I don't know who I am, what I want to do, and I would rather you figure that out for me than me take the time to figure out what I want to do. Now, at the same time, when you figured out what it is that you want to do, be willing to do anything. Because many times when you're working in video games, you might get into a company that you want to work for, but the tasks that you're doing might have nothing to do with the games that you enjoy. But just because you get a job working at Activision, I pray for you if you do, but doesn't mean you're going to be working on Call of Duty. And I'll give you a great example of this. So my first day working in the PlayStation Pavilion, I got put on one game the entire baseball season. I never knew how long baseball was until that. And that game was SingStar. Literally, that was my jam for 6 months, was SingStar. That's me in the middle. I know I'm so young and luscious, but 6 months I was on just SingStar. I didn't get to play Guitar Hero. I didn't get to play Gran Turismo. It was just because no one else wanted to do it, and someone had to cover it. More interestingly than that, my first day working with Nintendo brand, this was back in 2009 for the holiday season. We had Mario Kart. We had, what was it, whatever the Mario game was at the time, I think it was Mario Brothers Wii. We had, what was it, Wii Sports had just came out with the new Wii Sports Resort. Wii Sports Resort was out, Wii Fit was out, it was all these different games. The game that I was stuck with for the entire Christmas season was Style Savvy. And I loved every minute of it, because at the end of the day, I was just happy to be there. But at the end, but that's kind of the situation that it's in. I mean, obviously, when I went along in my career, and I managed, I could be like, haha, I can be on whatever I want. You have to do it now. But understand that when you work at a job that video games are at the forefront of what you do, the things that you do aren't necessarily going to be in line with the games that you like. You might end up working at a certain company where, I like doing different types of first-person shooters. I like doing different types of fighting games. But the company is saying, well, we're actually coming out with a more casual game. You're going to be QA testing that for X amount of time. Or if you're over in the art side of it, you're going to be drawing foliage for Madden, because football players need realistic grass now and stuff of that nature. So, you figured out what it is that you want to do. Like, you've sat down, you thought about what your skills are, what you bring to the table, and what kind of roles you would fit into. The next question is, what kind of options are available? Just because you know what you want to do, you might not know that the job title for what you enjoy is actually out there. Now, I'm going to show you how to figure out a best way to search for different jobs, but based on the past week, these are just a fraction of the companies that are hiring right now for various positions. Some of those positions, and this is where we get into the unique stuff, are these right here. Now, there were a lot more than this, but once again, we only have 50 minutes. So I actually picked out some of my more interesting ones. Based on the feedback from doing this panel before, all of these positions are entry level to junior level. Now, going through each of these positions one by one. A baseball test analyst, your job, and this is a direct quote from the job listing on PlayStation. Oh, I should also mention, all of these jobs have been posted in the past week. So all these are fresh jobs. The oldest one, the one that's the Sims communication intern, was posted 3 days ago. But a baseball test analyst, your major job function is to utilize baseball knowledge to provide feedback and improve the experience of people for a more realistic game in the MLB The Show series. In essence, you're a QA tester, but you're not testing for just bugs, you're testing for authenticity. You're testing for, if someone pitches this ball, is it supposed to be pitched like this? Or is it supposed to, in essence. Destiny historian intern, this was actually a really interesting one. This is more of a research position, not necessarily like data research, but more so you're going along with like the fiction and the lore of Destiny, working directly under the narrative team to actually help create the lore of Destiny. Like, anyone who's played Destiny before, I hate to break it to you, there is no Zavala in real life. There is no Traveler in real life. Someone made that up. And this is the people you would be supporting if you were to take a job like this. Nintendo marketing coordinator. This job is actually for digital marketing assets on the My Nintendo shop. So what you would be doing is anything like promotions, like sweepstakes, launch activities. You'd be the person updating that and making sure that it's all in line with different things. If an item goes on sale, which I mean on Nintendo, an item going on sale is like, that's a crapshoot. But you would be the person who would update that information, get those metrics from the different teams, and then curate that information on there. Customer social experience expert at Twitch. You take a lot of the feedback from different people that use Twitch, whether it be Twitch as a streamer or Twitch as a consumer, someone that actually is watching Twitch, or even Twitch as a partner. So when people run different ads and stuff like that, there might be issues that advertisers have. I mean, most people who are into YouTube have heard of the adpocalypse before, so similar situations. You're the intake person for all that. You don't make the decisions. You'd probably give those to like an analyst or someone like that to then compile that data, but all you are is just intake. You take the feedback from different sources and you compile that yourself. Associate content operations specialist, specifically for Overwatch 2. So what this position is you're actually taking different content and you're curating it for them to use on their social medias. You're curating it for them to use in trailers and advertisements. When you see the trailer, not the CG trailers, but when you see like the trailers of like gameplay and stuff, that didn't just happen. Like someone actually had to sit there and like perfectly get this character to jump and fall in like the perfect way, and that's kind of what that job goes into. Sims communication intern, this is a PR job, so public relations. What you do is you actually work with different third parties, so content creators, people that want to license the branding, and you actually make sure the communication between what they want and what your brand is actually are in sync. And finally, QA localization tester. There's two options for this. There's the localization testers, and there's also the localization writers. There's a Nintendo job right now for localization writers, but as far as localization testers for 2K, I only put German and Spanish because that was all I could fit, but they had German, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Dutch. I didn't even know Dutch was a language. But it's one of those jobs to where at least not with the tester, but with the writer, what they want more so is translations, cultural sensitivity. You know, if I call someone this name in this language, that means something completely different in this language over here. And, you know, making sure that, you know, even though it's written in a certain language, that it actually flows. Like, I don't know if any of you remember, like, Dragon Ball Z back in the day, like the ocean dub, like, let that child alone, like, kind of making sure that stuff like that flows smoothly. But these are just examples. Like, I'm not here just to, like, be like, these are the only jobs they have, but just these are some of the more interesting ones I didn't even know existed. Well, I knew some of them existed, but pretend I didn't. When you finally have an idea of what it is that you want to do in games, like when you say, okay, I think this is a great path for me, I think this would be a great fit for me, the next job would be, how do you actually go about applying to these places, or at least making these connections? The first and most important one, we'll talk about three. The first and most important one is networking. Like, you're going to hear people say that a lot, because it really is just the golden ticket into most opportunities that you can have. As you can see, I'm over, people know me as stuck guy. Like, it's really, networking doesn't have to be something that's scary. Believe it or not, the person you're talking to is probably just as scared to network as you. You know, a lot of people in gaming have, you know, an introverted mentality. That's not a bad thing, but even at certain levels, some people, like myself, you know, I can do this for an hour, but then as soon as this is over, I'll go back to my room and hyperventilate in the corner for like 40 minutes. But then some people have a lot of issues even approaching other people about having conversation in gaming. But you'd be surprised at how many people that work in gaming are just as hard, have just as much difficulty talking to other people as you. So the best thing I would suggest is know what values that you bring to the table. You know, you don't have to be like, you know, I have 27 years of this or 16 years of that, but at the very least, what do you enjoy doing? What do you enjoy doing in video games? Be able to have a conversation with someone about that. Or instead of going the route of trying to, you know, market yourself for a job, market your personality as someone that they could get to know. Because a lot of people that I end up getting contracts with, I'm actually, believe it or not, friends with on like PlayStation and Nintendo and different things of that nature. Like, I met them through the different things that I do, and I've built a rapport with those people. The same way how you would do, say, for example, if you formed a raid group in any of your favorite video games. You don't know these people at first, but then you meet people, you find out some stuff that they can do, they find out stuff that you can do, you guys bond and connect, you have a good time, and then at some point in time, hey, you know, I need to kill this level 28 dragon, you know, is there any chance that, you know, you might need a healer in, you know, in the future and stuff like that? But events, conventions like this, game jams, social media. I wanted to mention social media. Be careful with that, because you can come off kind of creepy if, like, you know, you're just spamming someone's inbox. If you're like, hey, such and such, whose full name I know and address and how many, you know, jobs you've had and where your family lives. Like, don't be that guy. But there's nothing wrong with shooting someone a DM like, hey, I really appreciate what you did for this, or I love your work on that. I'd love to have a conversation more with you on how you've done it, because I have my own project that I'm working on and I would love some of your advice. There's a difference between this is what I do, let me throw it in your face, now give me a job, versus finding connections with people. That's all networking is, finding connections with people. Because sometimes it's not even the person you're talking to that'll get you into what you want to do. They know someone that's doing what you want to do, or they know someone that'd be a good fit for you, and then they make those connections. But this right here is the number one thing that's going to get you further than anything else. But we do have other stuff too. School. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this is going to get a little controversial, because I'm going to be very blunt with you. If you are going to school, getting straight A's, all your classes on time, perfect attendance, you graduate with your degree, you are schooling wrong. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Your grades when you're in school means so little to your success later on in trying to get a job in video games. There are certain careers, but there are very few careers where your GPA is going to directly impact whether or not you get a job, regardless of whether it's in video games or not. The most important thing that you need to be doing when you're in school is the first thing we just talked about, is networking. You need to get to know your peers, you need to get to know your professors, because depending upon what industry you're in, those are probably going to end up being the people that you're going to work with, that you're going to work under someday. You might work over them someday. When you go to your career counselor in your school, depending upon how big your school is, they are probably one of the worst resources to finding a job in video games, because they are so broad with what they do. I mean, they do try. I'm not going to do it. You guys are terrible. But they are so broad with what they do, they have a lot of difficulty being able to deal with your specific situation. And I remember one time I did an internship, a marketing internship, when I was trying to work my way up into a management position doing the stuff that I do. I went to the career counselor one time and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to do it in video games and keep going the direction I've been going. And she sat me down and she opened up Indeed, and then she looked at me, I looked at her, she looked at me confused, I looked at her confused, I got up, I left, and that's how that went. The best resource at your school to talk to is your professors. Because believe it or not, your professors have usually been in the industries and been doing the different things that you're interested in doing, and you can make a rapport with them and have a lot easier way of getting into the stuff that you want to do. For example, the PlayStation position that I showed you guys earlier, the one that was in the AMC movie theater, I actually got that through my Spanish professor, because it's a fun story. I actually got that through my Spanish professor because that's the reason why I showed it. His wife was actually the account manager for that Sony contract, specifically for the AMC Sony partnership contract through a company whose name I can't mention. But he didn't even know that I did promotional marketing and experiential marketing. I didn't know that his wife did it too. But sure enough, in having the conversation, of course, he asked me, because I would come to class in my uniform, because I'm like, I don't change clothes, it'd be weird. So he would ask me, like, you always come in with like this PlayStation shirt. Oh, my wife does that. And then we had a conversation. Before you know it, oh, she's in industry, you're in industry, you two should link up. And then, now, don't get me wrong, you're not gonna go to every Spanish teacher and they're gonna have like an entry to video games for you. Let me clear that up right now. But a lot of your professors actually work in the industries that you wanna do. If you have a professor that works in coding, if you have a professor that works in art design, chances are they have a history of working in these fields. And even if they can't help you get something, they might know someone who can help you get somewhere. So I just want to clarify this, especially for any of you that are still in school. If you spend your entire college career only worrying about your schoolwork and nothing else, you don't intern, you don't network, you don't go find out what opportunities that people don't tell you about, you're not going to get anything but a piece of paper out of it in the end. Okay. And lastly, this is probably one of the more difficult ones that I want to talk about, because a lot of people get stuck here, which is like online job listing. Now, there are a lot of great places you can go to find jobs online. The difficulty is that the volume of people that use services like this are massive. So you might have a company come up and say, oh yeah, we're hiring all the time, we're definitely looking for more people that can fit this role, but you might be person number 300,000 today that has sent an application for this. But I'm gonna show you guys an easier way to navigate this. And what I'm about to tell you is top secret. Do not let it leave this room, minus that camera that's on me. But this is probably one of my favorite resources to find jobs in video games, specifically for what it is that you want to do. and that's hitmarker.dead. Now, I don't work for them, they don't pay me, nothing like that. It's just a good tool and game recognized game. See what I did there? So what this is it a job search tool that lists different openings within video games and tech, so not just with video game companies, but it also lists stuff for like Amazon, it lists stuff for Twitch, it lists different things in esports, and what you can do is you can actually sort based on keywords you're looking for. So if you wanted to go into, say, data analytics, you could search for that. You could type in baseball and find the baseball analytics position. You can search based on location. Remember, video games is a global industry. There are positions like at Ubisoft in Montreal and in different places like that. You can search based on experience level. Entry level being like no experience to like a year, junior, and then it's like mid-level and then senior. Like I wouldn't start with the senior level positions no matter how cool they are if you haven't done that yet. But what you can do with this tool is you don't have to make an account, sign up for nothing like that. What you can do with this tool is you can use this to find updated jobs that are posted, then go directly to that company's page and find the same listing. So for example, if you were to wanted to be a marketing manager, or like let's say a marketing specialist, more entry level, marketing specialist for Nintendo, and you saw that was a position that was open, you don't have to use this site to apply for it. You can directly go to Nintendo's website and submit your application that way. This is just a tool for you to find them a lot easier across a lot more companies, because the biggest issue that you're gonna have if you're applying for jobs online is that if you stick to just one company, chances are you're probably not going to get in that. You shouldn't base your career on I want to work for this exact specific company, because they only have so many positions. Like, you might need to be flexible. You might even need to consider if you wanted to move out of the state, out of the country, to get an opportunity somewhere else, if you didn't have any ties that were like keeping you here. You know, I'm in my 30s, I got lots of ties. But so with that being said, when you apply online, it's a whole different game than networking. Networking is a lot more personal. Networking, you can leave impressions on people. When you apply online, you're a piece of paper. So the number one thing that I want you guys to understand as far as like applying like online, specifically with your application, is what's called an ATS, applicant tracking software. So before your resume makes it to anybody, it's going to go through software. It's going to go through, a computer is going to see it before any human being sees it. And what I want you guys to understand is that you need to make sure that your resume is full of keywords. You need to make sure that your resume is full of relevant work experience. You know, if you've been in the job workforce for 20 years, they don't need to know that you have a high school diploma. It's if you've got, you know, certain levels of experience. If you're applying for a job, say, doing something in coding or doing something in design, it's probably not going to help you to put that you worked at McDonald's for X amount of time, unless that's your only job experience. So keep it relevant and simple as possible. Now, also, make your resume as simple as possible, because two things about that. One, the more stuff that you put into the resume to make it look cute and pretty, unless you're getting into like graphic design and you want to kind of show off your skills, all that's really doing is weighing down certain softwares that are trying to find your resume. So if you have like your photo and all these weird fonts that don't really register except on your computer, and you have all these different like boxes everywhere, and that doesn't register very well with certain applicant softwares, because what that's going to do is it's just going to send them just a jumbled up mess of stuff that's not going to make sense for a human to read. With that being said, what you also don't want to do is, this is a strategy people used to use a long time ago. You don't want to try to copy and paste the job description and post it on the last page invisibly. People used to do that to kind of get their resume seen, like the software will pick up on a lot of the keywords. That is a very bad idea, because what ends up happening is that the person who physically reads it is going to see this and be like, this doesn't match what the computer just told me, and then they're going to throw it in the trash because there's a whole bunch of red flags being thrown. Also, and this is a very important thing, don't put your picture on your resume. You know, it's you know, I'd like to paint like, you know, a beautiful picture for you guys, but bias does exist. You know, not just with the way you look, but especially with your age. So if you're an older individual, there are people that might not hire you into what they consider younger organizations. On the vice versa side, if you've been doing something for years, no matter what your experience is, if you look young to them, they might not want to put you in a senior position, especially if you're in a position which is above them. So, like I said, don't even open yourself up to any kind of biases, and just, you don't need to do anything like that. The only other thing that I'll mention as far as actually putting in your resume is when you're listing your relevant experiences, if there is any situations where, so for example, when I'm hiring people for different events, because sometimes I get a staff, they'll send me just a stack of resumes and be like, hey, you need like 30 people to work this such and such event. Figure it out. Try to keep it to as few pages as possible. Try to make sure that what you're saying is as simple as possible. Like, you don't need to put like a 20-page paragraph as to this job description. Like, I can connect dots. I can figure out what you did from just the title. But more importantly, what you want to do is you want to have any kind of impact that you had. Like, a lot of people, where they fail in the resume situation is that all they do is list what they did. They list the tasks that they did. They didn't list anything about as far as, what did you do to improve upon the position? What did you do to, help the company or benefit the company? It can be statistical numbers. I contributed to a 20% increase in attendance, or I made a new process that made it easier for us to track certain situations. Like, I know it's extra work, and I know that for many people, especially if you work in like the lower levels of a company, they don't give you a lot of that information. However, it doesn't hurt to ballpark. No one's gonna come out here and say, you said on your resume 28%, and I only see 22. Like, no one's gonna backlash you for that. But show that you can actually impact the company that you're going to, if that makes sense. Lastly, because I want to make sure I got time for questions or anything, when you go to interview for any job, let's say you've made it past the actual applicant system, you've made it past the selection process, you got a phone call, you made it through the recruiter, and you're actually doing an interview. The number one thing that you need to understand about the interview is that the interview will happen regardless of whether it's for the job or not. So when I say that, I mean if you were to network with someone at a convention, in essence, they're interviewing you right there. They're interviewing you not for what you know and what you do, but they're interviewing you just to see if you're somebody they want to work with. Like, if you come up and you're pushy and you're rude and you're just very disrespectful person, that's a red flag to them. Like, oh yeah, I'll definitely see what positions we have. I'll keep in touch. But even when you go into an interview, you're not going to know the answer to every question. It always helps if you research the company you're going to first. Like, if you know the products and you know the brand, you don't have to know every game, but if you have a general idea of what that company's mission is about. If you, like, for example, if you don't apply for a job at Nintendo expecting to make a whole bunch of Call of Duties, because that doesn't align with what their targets are specifically. Additionally, when you have an interview, understand that everything is not going to go your way. You're going to stumble. You're going to have, an interviewer is going to ask you questions intentionally to see how you work your way through it. Like, believe it or not, when someone asks, tell me about a difficult time that you experienced at work. Most interviewers don't really it's not like I'm not saying that I don't care, but it's not like a top priority for me hiring you based on, what the thing was that you did. My question more so is, what was your thought process when this thing happened? When the difficult situation happened, it could be a bad result. It could be, this happened, I did X, and unfortunately it all failed, but this was my process, and it was less worse than what it would have been had I not done X. That's the kind of things that interviewers are looking for. And the most important piece of the interview is to make sure that even if you don't get the job, leave on good terms. Because one story that I like to tell is that when we were actually staffing for the Super Smash Brothers, it was before that. We were staffing for a Mario Kart 7 event, and I had 4 applicants with me, and I had interviewed all 4 of them. The first person, I was like, this person's a perfect fit. I sent them a job offer, to come on board with us. The other 3 people, I sent them an email saying, I'm sorry, unfortunately, we couldn't consider you for this position. Person number 3 emailed me back, well, this is terrible. You suck, and all this other stuff, a whole bunch of things. Like, he was upset that he didn't get a job, which is understandable. Well, just before it was time for the person to come on board, she failed a drug test. So she was unable to take the position. The second person had already moved on to another position, so they weren't available. The third person, their resume was in the trash because after that email that they sent me, I didn't want to deal with this person anymore. So it ended up being the 4th person that ended up getting the job. So I say all that to say, when you're, dealing with people, when you're dealing with recruiters, when you're dealing with employees, when you're dealing with managers, always make sure to leave a good impression first and foremost. Don't burn bridges with people, because the gaming industry is a very small community. Like, it's not that big, believe it or not. And you'd be surprised that if you leave a bad impression with one person, how if you were to go to a different company, this person and that person actually know each other. They work together on different events and different contracts. They went ahead and say, oh yeah, I know this guy, don't hire him. And now you're right back at square one. A great example of this is there was a young lady that actually got an internship working at NASA a few years ago, and she decided to go online and post how enthusiastic she was about getting the internship. One person stepped in and said, hey, you should probably watch the language that you're using. She, as you can see on the middle one, had some distaste to him trying to, censor her, and it turns out that he was actually one of the shareholders for NASA. So as soon as she got her internship, she was already fired. So I say all this to say that, never forget that you're always in the spotlight being interviewed, especially when you work for major brands, because major brands, they have a way that they want themselves to be perceived. If you're not fitting within that certain dynamic, that certain culture, they might take offense. They might not want to bring you, they might not want to keep you on board. I've unfortunately been on the hiring side of things and been on the firing side as well, where I get a call from my boss saying, there's this person who, back before certain companies were a lot more comfortable with social media and the dynamics of how that plays into your company, they would see someone online and say, oh, this person's over here, doing drugs on social media. They work for your company, they gotta go. Or this person's over here bad-mouthing the games that we play on their personal Reddit forum, they gotta go. And there's nothing that I can do about that. I talked a lot. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I had more people that were going to come. Unfortunately, one of them had COVID, and one of them's wife was having a baby. So I know it's a crazy day. But I'm gonna open this up for questions. If you have any questions, feel free. If you're not comfortable asking a question, which I always recommend you do, because you'd be surprised who else has the same questions. I'll be here for a while to answer those questions. But this is your opportunity to ask anything that you want about me, about working at games, about anything we talked about. I know it was a lot. I'm sorry about that. But yeah. Any questions? Yes.
I can go both ways. So, what is your current position? Because I'm in experience in marketing as well. I'm only a brand ambassador, and I'm pivoted into event production. And I work in a luxury retail, luxury hospitality, and I'm pivoted more into experiential marketing. I think that's what my passion is. As a producer, not a brand ambassador. So, what advice could you give to me so I can successfully pivot into that concept? Because I know high-level luxury hospitality is different from experiential marketing. Because I really want to go back and see this like MAGFest. I want to coordinate it, worry about logistical things.
It's fun, isn't it?
For events that I actually care about, not some rich dude's wedding.
Not so rich. That's fair. So to answer your first question, I'm also in experiential marketing. I guess you would more so call me a brand manager, because I enjoy the street team aspect of it. I've been offered to go into more of the account manager side of it, but it's boring, man. I like going to PAX and MAGFest. I'm sorry. But it's to each their own. But to answer your question about how to get more into that, do you have any agencies that you keep in contact with?
Yes.
Those will probably be the first people that you want to reach out to, because the first thing that you want to do, going back to the thing we talked about with networking, is ask them, are there any openings that you know? Because especially in experiential marketing, there's a lot of agencies out there that do a lot of different events. So the first step I would take would be to actually ask, like, hey, I've done this for a while, pivoting is a very common thing to say in any kind of career industry. It sounds a lot more appealing than I'm tired of rich people's weddings. But I'm looking to pivot into this different part of the industry. I've done all these things. Some people will know you will already know the stuff that you've done. Do you know any great fits for me? Do you know of any opportunities within the industry? Because you can look, but sometimes you already have the network of people. Because the level that you're working at, I'm sure you've made plenty of connections at this point. And you'd be surprised at how many people that they know that actually are looking for someone that wants to do that within gaming. So first step I would do is to look within the network of people you have in experiential marketing to see if they know of any opportunities. And then beyond that, if you're still looking for more, I would then reach out to the different companies that have different contracts. So the nice thing about various experiential marketing brands is that they list the brands they work with online. Sometimes, it'd be outdated, but you can get an idea of so if I were to work for Switch Liberate Your Brand, I know that's the name of one of the companies, I'll be working a lot more with beverage products, Coca-Cola, vitamin water, Dasani, versus if I were working with, another company that does a lot more Under Armour brands and sports-related brands and works with ESPN and college football. So it'll be a little bit of groundwork, but finding those agencies, especially if you're willing to travel, that's the biggest one. Finding those agencies and then having those conversations with them, send an email. If you're local, you can go and, you can ask to speak with someone, maybe even come on the position of, can I get a tour of the facilities? You'd be surprised at the kind of stuff you can actually ask somebody and they'll do for you. But reach out to people at those different companies. Say, hey, are you hiring for this position? Are you looking to, even if you can't get that exact, say for example, account manager position, can I come underneath of that person as an associate and then work my way into that position? Because you'd be surprised how many people just quit. We're not hiring for this, but then a week later, their wife had a baby, they decided to change their lifestyle and stay home with their kids. You'd be surprised about that. Anybody else? Yes.
So would you say that the types of jobs that you were seeing on Hitmarker and stuff, is there space to work kind of remotely? Like you said, I'm in my 30s, I got all kinds of things keeping me here. So, but most of the big video game brands, things like that, are out on the West Coast, things like that. So aside from applying to things like Bethesda and ZeniMax and stuff, it's actually right here. Is it worth pursuing something that is there a space for remote work? Is there
Absolutely.
Are there things I can do from while being here but still at that space?
Absolutely. Now, the one thing I will say to that is that it will also depend on the position. There are certain positions, that remote work is impossible, unfortunately. But there are many positions that I'm trying to find a better way to phrase this. Not thanks to COVID, but as a result, because I don't want to thank COVID for nothing, but as a result of COVID, a lot of different positions have actually changed to where they offer more remote opportunities. Using Hitmarker specifically, let me go back. Here we go. There is an opportunity for location. You can also include a tag for remote positions. Now, understand that remote positions also have so for example, if something is a remote position, it might be a remote position in Spain, in Barcelona. Right. So even though it is a remote opportunity, you'd still understand that you're working for a Spanish-speaking company. So if you can fit into that dynamic, then that's fine. Depending upon what languages or even if that's an issue for them, because they might be looking for a localizer. But the brief answer is yes, there are a lot of remote positions. The number one thing that I would say for everybody is make sure you're checking frequently, because just because a job isn't up there today doesn't mean it won't be up there tomorrow or within a few hours, because anything can happen. People can quit, people can change, people can get promoted. New positions there's no season for on January 1st, everything rolls out. It's not like working at Planet Fitness. So I definitely recommend checking frequently, and you might end up finding the remote positions you're looking for. Yes.
So you had mentioned Nintendo, and I know from meeting with other people that Nintendo Japan, their mentality, their work culture is vastly different from American culture.
Very much so.
Culture. With your experience with Nintendo of America, was their work culture more standard American company, Japanese, maybe a mixture of both?
So, and let me rephrase this by saying that I don't work for Nintendo. I'm contracted with them. No, I'm just saying I don't want to be no, we said that on behalf of Nintendo. So I just want to just reiterate that. Right. But from my experiences working with them, it is almost two different cultures. It's the same mission, but just two different like groups of individuals. Don't get me wrong, like I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying like a slight to Nintendo of Japan, but their mission is different. Like their work ethics and philosophies are a lot different than we have in the U.S. I remember there was actually one story someone told me about how in the Nintendo of America corporate office in Redmond, Washington, I've been there 4 times now, I'm proud of it. When you first walk into the door, there's this giant wall in front of you, and if you look really closely, you can see stencils of it. And someone explained to me that what happened was that they had these giant like characters of like Mario and Luigi going down the wall. And one day someone from Nintendo of Japan came to make a visit, and they told them, nope, take all those down. Because for their culture, they don't support having these just lavish characters everywhere. They don't want it to look more, they want it to look more like a business office versus it looking like a theme park in essence. Don't get me wrong, they have sections in there, like, you know, they have a museum in there, they have like stuff like that. But to them, their impression was that when someone of business first walks into this building, they shouldn't see some giant plumber just woohooing all down the hallway. So they remove those because of those differences. But at the end of the day, regardless of like, you know, there is a parent company, that being the one in Japan. So obviously you can't just be like, well, we're this side, you're that side. You can't tell us what to do. It's more so like they have to go by what the grander scheme of things is. But it was an interesting thing that someone explained to me one time while I was talking to someone I was networking with at Nintendo, was that if you look really close, you can see the stencils of where they were, but they're just taken off the wall. So yeah, the company culture between the two of them, to me, is different. Not in a bad way, but just like the things that motivate them over there are different than things that motivate the people over in Washington State. But at the end of the day, they also have the kind of work ethic where when the Wii U failed, the president of the company decided to take a 50% pay cut. Like, I'd love to see somebody from Activision Blizzard do the same thing. Like, but yeah, no problem. Oh, sweet. Yes.
Hi, I hope I can speak loud enough for you to hear me, but, so I have a question.
As the band music kicks up, that happens.
I'll try to articulate through the math. So I have a question in regards to what you were just talking about. I'm from the Seattle area, and I've done some contract work with Microsoft and with Nintendo and a couple others.
They're like right next door too, right?
Yeah, we are very fortunate in the Seattle area for sure. So what I've noticed is that there is some competition when it comes to devices. And as a person who has been in those spaces, I just noticed some friction if I, for example, am at Microsoft and I pull out an iPad to start using it. Have you noticed any of that sort of culture, and how have you navigated the nuances of that kind of competition?
That's a very good question, because that is something that transcends not just video games, but like any industry. So for example, in the NFL, they don't allow iPads. Like they have a strict deal with Microsoft. Like you need to be using Surface Pros with like everything that you do. It's difficult, especially when you know, like you're talking about like your own devices. Like for example, if you were to bring in like your own stuff to work with and they're like, you can't use that, talk to a manager in advance. Like the best thing you can do is be blunt, be upfront. Like there's been many times where not even just competing technologies, but I've worked with competing brands before. I've worked with PlayStation literally the same week that I'm working with Nintendo for certain events. And the big thing that's always kind of worked for me is making sure that your higher-ups know your situation. They know, you know, how you feel about certain things. You know, I feel very uncomfortable about taking out my Dell or my Samsung Galaxy because, you know, certain, you know, other stakeholders or managers have kind of given me like this weird look or given me like weird interactions. But the best thing is that, or the best thing that you can do, is make sure that your bases are covered. Make sure that someone above you understands your situation, understands how you feel about it, because the worst thing you can do is say nothing and just kind of go with it, and then all of a sudden you end up in a mess that you didn't know was going to happen. But unfortunately, it does happen because not specifically Microsoft and Nintendo, but because companies are so strict with the like brands that they work with. They're so strict with like the certain people that come in and provide different opportunities for them, and that's not your fault. That's not anyone's fault who works with any of these companies, because you didn't give me an iPad. You told me to bring my laptop from home. So that's the best advice I could probably give. It's a gray area because there's really nothing you can do unless you're the CEO of the company in essence. But best thing I would recommend though is definitely making sure that your manager knows how you feel, and ask them like, do you have any advice about this? If you don't like my laptop, can you give me a free iPad? And stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have one other question, if that's okay.
Sure. They have one other song too. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Perfect. What is your experience with indie games, and if you have any advice for indie game developers navigating the industry and how to communicate with larger companies?
As far as my experience developing indie games, I have little to none. I have actually been able to speak with a couple people in the indie game scene, because a lot of games so certain companies will promote like obviously their flagship games, like they'll tell me like for this holiday event we want you to promote this game, this game, this game. But because of the impact of indie games, because the explosion of games that started out small and then ended up getting a whole bunch of explosive popularity over time, they start promoting more of those more and more. And as someone who works at an indie game company that is looking to move up into open the conversation between them and a bigger company, the first thing to do would be to reach out to their PR team. The PR team is going to take you, leagues above everywhere else as far as actually 5 minutes above, leagues above the PR team is going to be the best people to actually start opening the conversation and dialogue about how you can work with their company. What they're looking for, what you're looking for, what your brand represents, what their brand represents. And then from there, you can then start having dialogue with other stakeholders within the company. Me personally, the PR department has always been like the go-to people that get talked to, at least from the experiences that I've had, as far as making those connections, because they're usually the first ones that are on the ground making those connections themselves with the people. They're the ones looking for other games for on the platforms. Beyond that, same thing like this with MAGFest, with PAX, with anything else, is go to the different locations, talk to people. Many people have booths. Sometimes it might be someone like me who's a contractor, but I know PlayStation over recent years, a lot of the people working at those events, they actually are direct employees of PlayStation, and they would love to have these conversations. Like I pass these conversations off to people. I pass these conversations off to I forgot what the guy's name was, but he had an indie game company and he was interested in seeing if he can get put on the Nintendo eShop, and I was able to give him the contact at the PR company for Nintendo. At the time it was Golden Harris, I don't know who it is now, and they were able to start that conversation with them back and forth, because the beautiful thing about PR is that a lot of them work very closely with the legal team. A lot of them work very closely with the what's it called? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Long story short, they're the ones that actually know how to navigate those conversations in a legal way. Copyright people, that's what I'm thinking of. So go to different events, reach out to them, see if you can get a card, see if you can get a conversation, see if you can buy someone a coffee to sit down and actually open that dialogue. That would be after reaching out directly to the PR team. No problem. Yes.
Would you have any advice more specific for writers trying to start in the gaming industry?
For what?
Writers.
For writers? And he's showing me the 1 minute, so after this question, if you have a question, I can talk to you in the hallway and any other questions. But what kind of writing are you specifically talking about? Like narrative direction? Are you talking about like copywriting? Are you talking about?
Narrative.
Do you have a portfolio?
Not a large one.
Not a large one? Anything is better than nothing. So the first thing that I would probably do is, if I was trying to get a job specifically like writing narratively, I would bolster that portfolio as best I can so that way I have more to talk about when I actually go to a hiring manager. Because you can do similar to like what I just told her. You can go to different events and like start that conversation with people. It takes you so much farther than applying online for these jobs. Like I just wanted to kind of drill that home is meeting someone face-to-face, leaving an impression does a million things for you. But any job where you get to do something creatively, you want to try to build a portfolio as big as you can. It's not about doing everything, because many times a job is only trying to hire people for specific things. They might pivot you back and forth, but the more narrow of like the type of story you can tell and the type of narrative direction that you can create would be helpful. If you can do that for people for free, like for volunteer experience, just to bolster your portfolio and resume for yourself, that's a big plus. But that's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. Obviously, the more difficult way would be to go online and find the different opportunities and try to apply that way. Make sure that you're compliant with different applicant tracking system. Make sure that you list all your keywords. But I would try to, for a job like that, where I'm pretty sure that like a nice handful of people probably apply to it, I would want to meet someone in person and have that conversation and dialogue with them that way.
Thank you.
No problem. All right. Is that my fancy timer? Right on time. But once again, I want to thank you all for coming by. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask me. I'll be here like probably all day. Once again, I thank you guys. I never thought that this panel would actually be interesting to people, but apparently it is. So once again, thank you for being here. If you ever want to reach out to me, this is my email and my Instagram. If you're interested in a 30,000 person anime page, I can talk to you about that afterwards too. Just shameless plug. But for video game related stuff like this is me. You'll probably see me around somewhere, like at different events. And yeah, once again, thank you. And hopefully this was helpful, and I appreciate it.